I was in the ICU, machines humming, no visits, no calls. Then a message from my dad. Send the money for your sister's wedding. I blocked him, cut off the whole family. And then I made a move nobody saw coming, the kind that froze the room and finally made them face what they'd done. My world shattered, not with a bang, but a text. I was lying in an ICU bed, alone, hooked up to machines when a message from my dad landed like a punch to the gut. Send the money for your sister's wedding. That was it. That was the moment I blocked him, cut off my entire family, and made a move so unexpected it stopped an entire wedding cold and forced them to finally face the truth. You know that feeling, right? When your entire world just shifts beneath your feet. For me, it wasn't a car crash or some big dramatic event. It was a slow, agonizing whisper that turned into a scream. The people I thought loved me more than anything actually saw me as nothing but a walking ATM. My name is Liam, and I'm 29. And I swear, I'll never forget the metallic taste in my mouth or the steady, relentless beep of a heart monitor as I slowly, painfully dragged myself awake in that ICU bed. My body felt like it had been run over by a truck, then maybe backed over a few times for good measure. The dimmed fluorescent lights and that antiseptic hospital smell hit me hard. I remember blinking, trying to piece together how I even got there. The last thing I recalled was collapsing in my apartment, foolishly thinking I just had a nasty flu. Turns out it was severe pneumonia, the kind that almost takes you out for good. When a nurse saw my eyes open, she gave me this gentle, almost sad smile. She asked if I wanted her to call someone. I nodded, my throat raw from the oxygen tube. I just knew my family would be frantic. I mean, I'd been missing for a day. I gave her my dad's number, and she stepped out. When she came back, she hesitated just for a second before saying, "No one picked up, but I left a message." I thanked her, trying to swallow the sudden sting. My dad, never without his phone. My mom, same. My younger sister, Chloe, practically lived on social media. I imagined a flood of missed calls, urgent texts, but hours blurred into a full day. Nothing. Not a single message asking if I was okay. It's crazy how fast being alone in a hospital bed can mess with your head. You have nothing to do but replay every choice, every relationship. Every single time you've bent over backwards for people who suddenly can't be bothered to even pick up the phone for you. I thought about all the times I'd covered Chloe's rent when she was short. The times I'd driven 3 hours to bail my parents out when their car broke down, or dropped everything to watch their dog so they could have a weekend getaway. And now just silence. On the third day, finally strong enough to sit up without the room spinning, my phone vibrated. My heart actually leapt. Finally, someone must have noticed. But when I unlocked the screen, it wasn't a call. It wasn't even a "how are you?" It was a single text from my dad. It read, "We need $50,000 for Chloe's wedding. Send it this week." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening, not from the pneumonia this time, but from pure, seething anger. 3 days of radio silence while I was literally fighting for my life. And the first thing I hear from them is a demand for money. Like I was just some personal ATM. I could practically hear his voice in my head. That tone he always used. The one that made it clear he wasn't asking. He was telling. I didn't reply. I just dropped the phone and stared at the ceiling, letting the rage simmer. I remembered every birthday that went ignored because Chloe had some drama they needed to handle. Every time I was told, "You're the oldest, Liam. You should help out more." And here they were, proving that nothing had ever changed. When I was finally discharged a few days later, I didn't go to their house. I didn't call. I went straight home, collapsed on my couch, and just stared at my phone for what felt like forever. I thought about every sacrifice I'd made for this family. The fact that they didn't even know if I was alive until I'd had to tell them myself. And then finally, I replied. Not how they expected. I told my dad, no explanation, no apology, just a simple, unwavering no. And then I blocked his number. I blocked my mom. I blocked Chloe. And for the first time in my life, I felt a flicker of something new. Freedom. But that was just the beginning. The calls from unknown numbers started within hours. The emails followed. Then messages from relatives I barely spoke to, all with the same theme. Chloe's wedding is in 2 months. Stop being selfish. They had no idea where I'd been. No idea what I'd gone through. And yet, Somehow, I was the villain for saying no. The guilt trips turned into insults. The insults turned into threats of being cut off from the family forever. And that, I think, was the moment something inside me just hardened. I stopped feeling sad. I stopped feeling guilty. I stopped feeling like I owed them anything. If they thought I was the bad guy for finally standing up for myself, fine. I play the bad guy. The next time I heard from them, it wasn't a message. It was something else entirely. Something that made me sit bolt upright and actually laugh out loud in disbelief. It wasn't because anything was funny. It was because I finally realized just how little I mattered to them beyond what I could provide. The thing that made me laugh was an email subject line. All caps. Chloe's wedding is the most important day of our lives. I clicked it open. What greeted me wasn't an apology for ignoring me while I was in the ICU. It wasn't even an acknowledgement that I'd been sick. It was a detailed spreadsheet of expenses for Chloe's wedding. Venue deposit, catering, flowers, DJ, dress alterations, a family vacation fund, whatever that meant. And at the very bottom, a line, Liam's contribution, $50,000, due by next Friday. It was written like a formal contract, something already agreed upon. My contribution, as if this was some mandatory tax I had to pay to retain my privileges as a son. I could practically hear my dad's voice. Family helps family. Liam, don't be selfish. I didn't respond. I let the silence hang in the air. That silence must have driven them insane because soon I started getting group texts with my mom, dad, and Chloe all together. Chloe chimed in first. Liam, you're seriously stressing mom out. Can you just send the money so we can move forward with planning? My mom followed up. Your sister deserves this. She's waited her whole life. You make more than enough to help. Then my dad. I already told the venue we have the money. Don't embarrass us. Embarrass them. That word stuck with me. I had nearly died a week ago, and they were worried about embarrassment. When I still didn't reply, Chloe took it to social media. I woke up one morning to a long paragraph on Instagram accompanied by a picture of her in a wedding dress. The caption read, "So excited for our big day. Sad that certain family members are making it all about themselves and refusing to help out like they promised. It hurts when the people you love don't show up for you." She didn't name me, but everyone knew who she meant. Mutual friends started messaging me, asking if everything was okay, telling me I should just be the bigger person and not ruin my sister's wedding over money. It was surreal. Overnight, I became the villain in a story I hadn't even written. The worst part? A phone call from my Aunt Sarah. She was the one relative I actually liked, the one person I thought might take my side. Liam, she said, her voice soft. I heard what happened. Your mom is in tears. Chloe is devastated. This is supposed to be a happy time for everyone, and you're making it ugly. Just send the money and end this drama. I was quiet for a long time. Then I said, Aunt Sarah, I was in the ICU last week. Did anyone tell you that? There was silence. No, she said. What happened? I explained everything. How I collapsed. How no one had visited. How I woke up to a text asking for money. I heard her sucking a breath. For a moment, just a flicker, I thought she might get it. But then, softly, I'm sorry you went through that, Liam. I really am. But this wedding is important for your parents' reputation. Don't let a misunderstanding ruin everything. A misunderstanding. I had nearly died, and it was a misunderstanding. I thanked her for calling and hung up before I said something I truly regret. That night, another email from my dad. This one wasn't a request. It was an ultimatum. Liam, you have until Friday to wire the money. If you don't, you're no longer welcome in this family. We will not have someone who refuses to support his sister on the most important day of her life. No longer welcome in this family. As if family was something you could revoke like a subscription. It stung, but not in the way I expected. It didn't make me feel guilty. It made me furious, actually, because this wasn't about the wedding. It never was. This was about control. My parents had always used guilt to get their way. When I was a teenager, they made me give up a scholarship to an out-of-state college because family comes first. When Chloe wanted a trip to Europe and couldn't afford it, they told me to lend her the money because you're the responsible one. When I bought my first house, they convinced me to let Chloe live there rent-free until she got on her feet, which ended up being 2 years. And every time I tried to say no, I was met with the same line. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? I realized I'd been playing their game my whole life, and I was done. The next day, I made a point of posting on my own social media. A simple picture of me on my couch with my dog, smiling, looking healthy again. The caption: sometimes you have to lose everything to find peace. Surround yourself with people who care about you, not just what you can do for them. No names. I didn't need to. Within an hour, Chloe sent me a furious text from a random number. I blocked her, remember? Are you seriously trying to make me look bad in front of everyone? Grow up, Liam. You're pathetic. I didn't reply. That weekend, an invitation arrived in the mail for Chloe's engagement party. Thick, expensive cardstock, the kind that screams fortune. At the bottom, in my mom's handwriting, we expect to see you there. Bring your checkbook. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not just cracked. Broke. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even feel sad anymore. I just felt this cold, focused clarity. They weren't going to stop until I gave them what they wanted. And I wasn't going to give it to them. Not only that, they were going to regret ever trying to force me. So I made a plan, but before I could put into action, something happened that raised the stakes even higher. Something that showed me just how far they were truly willing to go to get what they wanted. The day of Chloe's engagement party came and went. And true to my word, I didn't show up. I stayed home, cooked dinner, watched a movie. For the first time in weeks, I felt calm. I thought, maybe that's it. Maybe they'll finally take the hint that I'm done being their walking bank account. But then the real betrayal happened. It started the following Monday morning when I logged into my online banking to pay some bills. My stomach dropped. My savings account, the one I had been building for years, was down by $25,000. First, I thought it was a glitch. I went through the transactions. There was a wire transfer from my account to an event planning company on the exact date of Chloe's engagement party. My hand was shaking as I called the bank. They confirmed the transfer had been initiated online from my login. I told them it wasn't me. I hadn't authorized anything. They froze the account immediately, but the damage was done. When I asked if they could reverse it, they said it would be investigated. Could take weeks, maybe months, and wasn't guaranteed. I sat there in stunned silence. The only people who had ever known my passwords were my parents. Years ago, when I was in college and needed help with rent, I'd given my dad my login just in case. I thought I'd changed it since then, but apparently at some point, I'd given him access again when he asked for help filing taxes. I never imagined he would actually use it. I called him, my voice shaking with anger. "Dad," I said, "did you transfer money out of my account?" He was silent for a moment, then sighed, as if I were the one inconveniencing him. "Liam, don't be dramatic. We told you the wedding expenses couldn't wait. You left us no choice." "No choice," I repeated, my voice rising. "You stole from me." "Watch your tone," he snapped. "This is for your sister, for the family. You should be thanking me for stepping up and doing what needed to be done." My blood went cold. Stepping up? You drained my account without permission. That's not stepping up. That's theft. "You're being selfish again," he said, completely unfazed. "We'll pay you back eventually, but right now, Chloe needs this. The deposits had to be made this weekend, or we'd lose the venue. You wouldn't want to humiliate her, would you?" I was so angry I could barely see straight. "Do you even care that I was in the ICU last week? That I almost died, and the first thing you think to do when I'm finally home is to take my money without asking?" There was a pause, then flatly, "You're alive, aren't you? So it's fine. Stop making this about you." I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. My chest hurt. My head pounded. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about trust, about respect, about the fact that my own father thought it was okay to violate my privacy and raid my savings just to throw a fancy party. An hour later, Chloe texted me from yet another random number. "Thanks for finally helping out. You should have seen the look on Mom's face when the planner confirmed the deposit. Maybe you do care about this family after all." I didn't reply. That night, I changed every password I had. Bank accounts, email, everything. I set up two-factor authentication and moved the remainder of my savings to a completely separate bank. I even contacted HR at work and told them to send my paychecks to the new account. I wasn't taking any chances, but the sense of betrayal stayed with me. Couldn't sleep. I kept replaying my dad's words. You left us no choice. As if I were some obstacle they had to work around. As if my money existed solely for them to use whenever they wanted. The next weekend, things escalated even further. I came home from running errands to find a car parked in my driveway. It was my parents. They were standing on my porch, my mom holding a folder of papers. I didn't want to let them in, but they refused to leave. So, I cracked the door open. What do you want? I asked. My mom gave me a look of disappointment. The same one she used to give me as a kid when I got a bad grade. Liam, we need to talk like adults. This cold shoulder thing you're doing isn't healthy. Healthy? I said incredulously. You stole from me. My dad stepped forward. We already told you we'll pay it back, but we also need to settle this once and for all. Here. He handed me the folder. Inside was a document labeled Family Agreement. It was basically a contract stating that I would contribute $50,000 to Chloe's wedding, with the $25,000 already taken counted as my first installment. At the bottom was a space for my signature. I stared at them, completely stunned. You came to my house to get me to sign this. This is about keeping the peace, my mom said softly. Once you sign, we can all move forward and put this behind us. Something inside me broke. Not just cracked. Broke. I realized this wasn't just about money. This was about control. About making sure I stayed under their thumb forever. I handed the folder back and signed and said, "Get off my property." My dad's face turned red. Liam, if you walk away from this, don't bother coming to the wedding. Don't bother coming to Christmas. Don't bother coming back at all. I opened the door wider and pointed to the driveway. Good. Now leave. They left without another word. But I could see the fury in their eyes. That night, as I sat alone in my living room, staring at that unsigned agreement, something shifted permanently. This wasn't a family conflict anymore. This was a war, and I was done playing defense. I was going to protect myself, my future, and everything I had worked for. And I wasn't just going to stop them from taking more. I was going to make sure they regretted ever trying to use me like this. What happened next set the stage for everything that followed. The revenge, the fallout, the moment when the entire family finally saw me not as their personal bank account, but as someone they should have never, ever underestimated. After they left that night, my house felt colder than ever before. I sat on the couch in silence, the unsigned family agreement lying on the coffee table like a poison I couldn't quite throw away yet. I kept staring at it, feeling the strange mix of grief and anger. It felt like I just buried something, the last shreds of hope that maybe one day my parents would treat me like a son instead of a resource. I didn't sleep that night. I barely slept all week. When I closed my eyes, I saw my dad's face red with anger, telling me not to bother coming back. I saw my mom's calm, almost pitying look like she was disappointed I wouldn't just fall in line. And I heard Chloe's smug little text, thanking me for helping out. I started questioning everything. Was I overreacting? Was I really being selfish? There were moments where I nearly convinced myself to just send the money and make it all go away. But every time I reached for my phone, I remembered waking up in the ICU alone, with no one there but the nurse who barely knew my name. That memory kept me grounded. It reminded me that this wasn't just a disagreement over a wedding. This was a pattern, one that had gone unchecked for far too long. Still, the silence was brutal. I hadn't realized how much of my daily life involved my family until it was gone. No text from my mom about family dinners. No calls from my dad to check in, which usually meant asking for something. No random pictures from Chloe showing off a new dress. It was like someone had pressed mute on an entire part of my life. And my so-called friends? They didn't exactly help. A few reached out, mostly to tell me I should just let it go, or family is family. One even said, "You know, Chloe's wedding is once in a lifetime, right? You can always make more money." I stopped replying to messages after that. For a while, I let myself sink into that low place. I went to work, came home, and didn't do much else. I stopped cooking, stopped cleaning, stopped going to the gym. The house was quiet, but not in a peaceful way. In a hollow, suffocating way. I caught myself sitting in the dark more nights than I'd like to admit, just staring at the wall, wondering if maybe they were right about me. But slowly, quietly, something started to shift. Maybe it was the quiet itself. Maybe it was the fact that for the first time in years, no one was calling me with a new emergency to solve. Maybe it was just the clarity that comes when you've got nothing left to lose. One night, I got up, turned on every light in the house, and started cleaning. I scrubbed the kitchen counters, vacuumed the living room, organized piles of unopened mail. It wasn't about the mess. It was about reclaiming something. My space, my time, my life. When I finished, I sat back down on the couch, looked at the family agreement one last time, and tore it in half. Then I tore it again and again until it was nothing but confetti scattered across my coffee table. I took a deep, shuddering breath. That was the night I decided I wasn't going to keep playing defense anymore. The next morning, I opened a new notebook and started writing. Not an angry letter, not a rant. A plan. I listed every account my parents might still have access to, every joint obligation I'd ever agreed to with them, every way they could possibly reach into my life and pull the rug out from under me again. Then I wrote action steps next to each one. Closed joint emergency credit card. Done. Remove my dad as emergency contact at work. Done. Transfer investments to a new brokerage they don't know about. Done. I started thinking further ahead, too. If they were willing to take $25,000 without asking, what else might they try? Could they show up at my house again? Could they try to manipulate relatives into harassing me? Could they even try to take legal action if I refused to pay? So I made another list, people I needed to talk to. HR, to make sure all my personal info was locked down. The bank, to flag my accounts for any suspicious activity. A lawyer, just in case I needed one down the road. It wasn't just about protecting my money anymore. It was about protecting my peace of mind. But even as I was putting these pieces in place, there was still this gnawing ache inside me. The part of me that wanted someone, anyone, to say, we were wrong. We're sorry. We care about you more than we care about a wedding. That apology never came. Instead, a few weeks later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was my uncle, the one who lived out of state and rarely got involved in family drama. Liam, he said, his voice hesitant. Your dad told me what's going on. He said you've cut everyone off completely. I didn't say anything. He went on, look, I don't know all the details, but I do know this. Your parents are telling everyone you're unstable, that you've been acting erratic since you got sick. They said you're refusing to help because you're bitter and resentful. He paused. I figured you'd want to know what's being said about you. Something in my chest went cold. Not just because of what he said, but because I wasn't even surprised. They can say whatever they want, I said flatly. I'm done trying to prove myself to people who never cared about me in the first place. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, if you ever need a place to go, you've got family here. Just remember that. I thanked him and hung up. After that, something hardened in me completely. If they wanted to paint me as the villain, fine. I could live with that. But I wasn't going to let them get away with what they did. Not just taking my money, but trying to destroy my reputation when I refused to play along. That's when my plan started to grow teeth. It wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about making sure there were consequences. And the perfect opportunity was coming sooner than I thought, because Chloe's wedding wasn't just a private family affair. It was a huge event with business partners, extended relatives, half the town invited. If they thought I was just going to stay quiet and let them spin their story, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. But before I could make my move, there was one last blow that hit me. Something that made me feel like I had truly hit rock bottom, but also solidified that I was on the right path. A letter arrived in the mail, a legal notice from my own father. It claimed that the $25,000 they took was a gift I had agreed to, and that if I didn't send the remaining $25,000, they would pursue all available remedies to enforce the family agreement. There was in black and white. My own parents were threatening to sue me. I sat there with the letter in my hand, my chest tight, my pulse pounding. And then, strangely, I felt calm. Completely calm. Because this wasn't a family fight anymore. This was war, and I was done being on the losing side. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, that legal notice still in my hands, my coffee growing cold beside me. Something just clicked in my head. It was the strangest thing. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even scared. For the first time in my life, I felt completely in control. That letter wasn't a threat. It was a gift. It gave me permission to stop pretending this was about family. It made everything crystal clear. My parents and sister had chosen to treat me like an adversary, not a son or a brother. And if this was going to be a fight, I was going to win. The very next day, I took a personal day from work and drove straight to a lawyer's office. I had no idea what to expect. I'd never even consulted a lawyer before. But as soon as I explained the situation, the attorney's eyebrows shot up. They used your login credentials to access your account and transfer funds without authorization, he repeated, flipping through the documents I brought. Yes, I said. And now they're claiming I agreed to it and threatening legal action if I don't send more. He let out a low whistle. Liam, this isn't just a civil matter. This could be criminal. If you want, we can file a police report today. At the very least, we can draft a cease and desist letter and put them on notice that any further harassment will be met with legal action. For the first time in months, I smiled. Do it, I said. Within a week, that letter was sent. Not just to my parents, but to Chloe as well. It was polite, professional, and absolutely devastating. It outlined the unauthorized transfer, demanded repayment within 30 days, and warned that any further attempts to coerce or defame me would result in legal escalation. It even cited specific state laws about fraud and unauthorized access. The silence that followed was deafening. No calls, no texts, no more letters. For a brief moment, I thought they might actually back down. In that quiet, I started focusing on myself for the first time in years. I cleaned up my diet, started running again, went back to the gym. The first week was hard. My body felt heavy from months of stress and inactivity. But by the end of the month, I could feel the difference. My energy came back. I was sleeping through the night again. Work started to improve, too. Without the constant drama of my family draining me, I was sharper, more focused. I started volunteering for projects I used to shy away from. My boss noticed. One day, he called me into his office and said, Liam, you've been killing it lately. There's a senior position opening up next quarter. You should apply. I did. And a few months later, I got the promotion along with a substantial raise. With the extra income, I started shoring up my financial position. I maxed out my retirement contributions, opened a high-yield savings account, and even dipped my toes into investing in a rental property with a friend from work. Felt good. No, it felt powerful to know that every step I was taking was securing a future that was mine alone, completely separate from my parents' influence. Meanwhile, word about the legal letter must have started spreading through the family grapevine because I started getting quiet, almost hesitant messages from cousins and extended relatives. Some of them wanted to hear my side of the story. Others just wanted to check in. A few admitted they'd been told I'd gone off the deep end, but now they were starting to wonder if maybe there was more to it. I didn't badmouth my parents or Chloe. I didn't need to. I just told the truth. That I'd been in the ICU, that no one came, that my account had been drained. Without my consent. And then I let them sit with that information. The tide started to turn. I noticed that Chloe stopped tagging certain relatives in her wedding planning posts. My mom's Facebook activity went suspiciously quiet. Even my dad, who usually couldn't resist sending long family updates, stopped posting altogether. It was like watching a ship slowly start to list to one side. Then came the real turning point. The bank finished its investigation. I got a call one afternoon from the fraud department confirming that the $25,000 transfer had been unauthorized. Not only were they crediting the money back to my account, but they also confirmed that the IP address used to initiate the transfer matched my parents' home network. I can't describe the satisfaction I felt in that moment. It wasn't just about getting my money back. It was about proof. Hard, undeniable proof that I hadn't made this up, that I wasn't being dramatic, that I wasn't the selfish son they had painted me as. Well, I told my lawyer. He grinned and said, "This strengthens your position considerably. If they try to push back, we have all the leverage now." And that's when I realized I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was winning. The timing couldn't have been better because Chloe's wedding was getting closer. Invitations had already gone out, and apparently, it was shaping up to be the social event of the season. A massive venue, a live band, a guest list packed with business partners, distant relatives, and family friends. I hadn't been invited, of course. My name had been scrubbed from everything, but that didn't bother me. In fact, it gave me an idea. I started quietly preparing for the next move. I gathered every piece of documentation I had, the bank statements, the lawyer's letter, the confirmation of the fraud investigation, and organized them neatly in a folder. Then I had copies made, just in case. I also started reconnecting with certain relatives and family friends who I knew would be at the wedding, not to gossip, but to have casual, calm conversations where I simply shared what had happened from my perspective. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't get emotional. I just laid out the facts. The reactions were telling. Some were shocked. Some were angry. Not at me, but at my parents. One family friend even said, "You know, we've always suspected your dad was a bit controlling, but we never thought he'd go this far." I could feel the narrative shifting. And as I watched it happen, I realized that I didn't even need to crash the wedding or make some dramatic scene to get my point across. By the time the big day rolled around, half the room would already know the truth, and the other half would be wondering why there was so much tension in the air. But I wasn't done yet. I had one last card to play, one final move that would make sure my parents and Chloe understood once and for all that I was no longer someone they could manipulate or control. And as the wedding date drew closer, that plan started to take shape in a way that was smarter, sharper, and more devastating than anything I could have imagined back when this all started. Because I wasn't just a victim anymore. I wasn't just the son who got taken advantage of. I was the one holding all the cards now. And when the day came, I was going to make sure everyone saw exactly who they'd been dealing with all along. But then something happened just a few days before the wedding. Something that raised the stakes even higher and gave me the perfect opening to execute my plan in a way that would shock everyone in that room. The week before Chloe's wedding, I was feeling sharper than I had in months. My mornings were calm, my work was going well, and I was sleeping soundly for the first time since this nightmare began. But then one afternoon, I got an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something made me pick up. "Liam," a man's voice said. "Yes." "Who's this?" "This is Mark from the event planning company," he said, his tone cautious. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to confirm a detail for the wedding invoice. You're listed as the primary contact for payment on the final balance. We've received partial payment, but there's still $35,000 outstanding. Can I get confirmation they'll be wired by Thursday?" I almost laughed, not out of humor, but out of sheer disbelief. "Wait," I said. "You're telling me my name is on the payment contract?" "Yes," Mark said. "Signed by your father, but under your name. Is that incorrect?" It was like the air went still around me. I asked him to send me a copy of the signed contract. He hesitated, probably wondering if he was about to step into some messy family drama, but eventually agreed. When the PDF landed in my inbox an hour later, I opened it and felt my jaw tighten. There it was, plain as day. A service contract for Chloe's wedding with my name printed on the payment line, my old email address listed as the primary contact, and a signature that looked suspiciously like my dad's poor attempt to forge mine. I sat there staring at it for a long time, the pieces clicking into place one by one. This was why my dad was so confident I owed them. This was why they kept insisting I had agreed to pay. They had literally signed my name on a contract without telling me. I forwarded the document straight to my lawyer. His reply came within minutes. "This is forgery, and it's not just a civil matter. This could be prosecuted criminally. This is very strong leverage, Liam. Strong leverage." Those words made something electric run through me. I asked him what my options were. He laid them out calmly, professionally. I could press charges and potentially have my father investigated for fraud. I could send a demand letter, forcing them to pay the full remaining balance, clearing my name from the contract and reimbursing any costs. Or I could wait, let them go through with the wedding, knowing that the venue would come after them when the remaining payment didn't come through under my name. That last one made me pause, because as much as I wanted justice, I also wanted them to understand exactly what they had done to me. To feel, even for a moment, the same fear and powerlessness I felt when I saw my savings drained. So I decided to wait. But I didn't just sit back and do nothing. I started gathering every piece of documentation I had into one meticulously organized folder. The forged contract, the bank's fraud investigation results, the cease and desist letter, every email, every text message. I even included the engagement party invitation with my mom's handwritten note telling me to bring your checkbook. I made multiple copies, one physical, one digital, on a secure drive. Then I wrote a letter to go along with it. Not a rant, not an angry tirade, just a calm, clear statement of facts. I explained exactly what had happened, how they had crossed every line imaginable, and how their actions had consequences they could no longer control. And then I made a list of people who would receive it if things went too far. Relatives, close family friends, and, crucially, a few of my dad's business partners who I knew would be attending the wedding. The more I prepared, the more focused I became. There was no fear anymore, no hesitation, just clarity. And then, almost as if the universe was giving me a sign, another piece of leverage fell right into my lap. I got an email from a cousin who worked in finance. He'd heard whispers that my parents were in more financial trouble than they were letting on. Apparently, they'd taken out a home equity loan last year and were behind on payments. The wedding wasn't just about Chloe's big day. It was about appearances. They were using this event to keep up the image that everything was fine, that the family was thriving. Suddenly, everything made sense. The pressure, the desperation, the lengths they were willing to go to. They weren't just trying to control me. They were trying to use me to save face. And that was when the shape of my plan fully came together. I wasn't going to just confront them privately. I wasn't going to yell, scream, or beg. I was going to let them walk into that wedding day believing they'd won, believing they had forced me into silence. And then I was going to take that illusion apart, piece by piece, calmly, and publicly in a way that would leave no doubt about who was really in control. It wouldn't be dramatic in the way they feared. No scene-stealing tantrum, no shouting match. But it would be unforgettable. Over the next few days, I lined up every detail. I made sure the documentation was ready. I spoke to my lawyer one more time and got his blessing that what I was planning was legal and protected. He even smiled when I told him my idea and said, "That's brilliant, Liam," and they won't see it coming. The night before the wedding, I stood in my living room, staring at the folder of documents on the table. The house was quiet, but not hollow anymore. It felt alive. Felt like my house, my life, my choice. For months, I've been playing catch-up, reacting to everything they threw at me. But now I was the one setting the stage. And when the curtain went up tomorrow, everyone would finally see the truth about my parents, about Chloe, and about the lengths they had gone to try and control me. And the best part was, I wouldn't have to raise my voice once. Because this time, I was ready. This time, I had all the power. And by the end of tomorrow, everyone would know it. But then, just hours before the wedding, I received one final message. One that would turn my carefully laid plan into something far bigger, far more dramatic than even I had anticipated. The morning of the wedding, I woke up earlier than usual, my mind surprisingly calm. The sun was streaming through the curtains. Birds were chirping outside. And for a moment, you wouldn't think today was going to be anything more than an ordinary Saturday. But as I showered and dressed, that quiet clarity I'd been carrying for weeks turned into a steady hum of determination. I had no intention of attending the ceremony. Not as a guest, anyway. But I'd been careful with my timing. The folder of documents was packed in my briefcase along with the calm letter I'd written, and my phone was fully charged with every screenshot, every piece of proof neatly organized in an album, ready to be shown if needed. Around noon, just as I was finishing breakfast, I got the message. It was from a withheld number. No name, just a single line. "You should know they're telling everyone you're mentally unstable. They said you tried to sabotage the wedding, and they had to cut you off for everyone's safety." I sat there staring at the message, a small laugh escaping me. Safety. That was the narrative they'd chosen now. That I was dangerous, unhinged, a liability. For a moment, I almost pitied them. They were so desperate to stay in control that they'd rather destroy my reputation than face the truth. But then I realized something. This message wasn't bad news. It was the final push I needed. If they wanted to drag my name through the mud in front of everyone, then everyone was going to hear my side, whether my parents liked it or not. I didn't go to the ceremony. I let that part pass quietly. But I knew there would be a reception afterward. A big one. The kind where everyone was seated at tables and speeches were made. And that was where I planned to deliver my quiet, calculated strike. I drove to the venue later that afternoon, parking far enough away that I wouldn't be noticed right away. The building was stunning. A sprawling banquet hall decorated with white flowers and golden arches. The kind of place that screamed, "Look how perfect we are." I waited until I knew everyone was seated and the first round of toasts had been made. And then I walked inside. The look on my mother's face when she saw me was priceless. Her smile froze. Her champagne flute halfway to her lips. My dad stiffened in his chair. Chloe, radiant in her dress, looked at me with open disgust. I didn't make a scene. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked over to an empty table near the back, opened my briefcase, and began placing neatly printed folders, one on each table within reach of the guests I'd chosen in advance. Each folder contained the same thing: the bank's fraud investigation results, the copy of the forged contract with my name on it, the lawyer's cease and desist letter, and my calm, measured explanation of what had happened. The room started to murmur as people opened them. Conversations quieted. Heads began to turn toward my parents' table. My dad was the first to speak. "Liam," he hissed, standing up. "What do you think you're doing?" I looked at him evenly and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'm telling the truth." "You've had your turn." There was a ripple through the room. The kind of electric silence that means everyone is suddenly very, very interested. "I'm not here to ruin Chloe's day," I continued, my voice steady. "I'm here to clear my name. You've been telling people I'm unstable, that I'm bitter, that I refuse to help. What you didn't tell them is that you drained my bank account without permission, forged my signature on a contract, and threatened to sue me when I refused to give you more." Gasps echoed through the hall. Someone dropped a fork. My mom tried to stand, but I raised a hand. "You don't need to defend yourself. Everyone here can see the documents. They can decide for themselves." And then I sat back down. I didn't need to say another word. One by one, people started flipping through the folders, their faces changing as they read. I saw my uncle, the one who had warned me about the rumors, shake his head slowly, his jaw tight. I saw one of my dad's. Business partners pushed back from the table and stalk out of the room, phone already to his ear. My parents didn't speak. Chloe started crying. Not the delicate kind of crying you see in movies, but the ugly, angry kind, her makeup streaking down her face. My dad's face turned purple, and my mom looked like she might faint. I stayed for another 5 minutes, letting the weight of the truth settle over the room like a heavy curtain. Then I stood, picked up my briefcase, and walked out without looking back. The last thing I heard before the doors closed behind me was the low, furious whisper of voices. Guests demanding answers, relatives asking why no one told them the truth. The band awkwardly trying to play something soft to fill the silence. Outside, I took a deep breath of the cool evening air. For the first time since this all started, I felt light. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just free. I didn't stay to see what happened next. I didn't need to. I knew that by the end of the night, the perfect image my parents had tried so hard to build would be in pieces. And I knew this was only the beginning, because the fallout from tonight wasn't just going to hit them socially. It was going to hit them financially, legally, and personally. And I was ready for every last bit of it. But the very next morning, I woke up to something I hadn't expected. Something that made the fallout even bigger, louder, and more public than I ever could have orchestrated on my own. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing nonstop. At first, I thought it might be my alarm, but when I grabbed it from the nightstand, I saw dozens of notifications, texts, emails, even tag posts on social media. Word had spread faster than I could have imagined. I opened the first message. It was from my uncle. "Liam, you lit a fire last night. People were furious. Half the guests left early. The band packed up before dessert was served. Your dad stormed out. Your mom was crying in the parking lot. Chloe was hysterical. She accused them of ruining her wedding." I sat there stunned for a moment, then slowly exhaled. I hadn't wanted to humiliate Chloe, but after everything she'd done, publicly shaming me, siding with my parents while knowing nothing about what I'd gone through, I couldn't bring myself to feel guilty. The second message was from the event planner, Mark. "Hi, Liam. Following up, I received confirmation this morning that the remaining balance on the wedding was paid, not under your name, but from a new account in your father's. I've also updated our records to remove your name entirely from all contracts. That was the first real victory, proof that they had finally been forced to take full responsibility. But the biggest blow came later that afternoon in the form of a phone call from my lawyer. "Liam," he said, his tone almost cheerful, "I just got word that your father's business partner formally withdrew from a joint project they were running. Apparently, he was at the wedding and saw the documentation you shared. He doesn't want to risk being associated with anyone under investigation for fraud." I blinked. "Under investigation?" "Yes," he said. "I took the liberty of forwarding the forged contract and the bank report to the district attorney's office, just as we discussed as an option. They've opened a preliminary inquiry. It doesn't mean charges yet, but it's enough to put significant pressure on your father to make this right quickly." I hung up the phone and sat back, letting the news wash over me. My parents had tried to intimidate me with legal threats, and now it was them staring down the possibility of real legal consequences. By that evening, my relatives started calling one by one, most of them apologizing. My Aunt Sarah, who had told me to just send the money, actually cried on the phone. "I didn't know, Liam," she said. "I believe what they told me. I'm so sorry I didn't check on you after you were in the hospital. I should have been there." Even my cousins, the ones who usually stayed out of family drama, texted me saying they supported me and that what I did at the wedding was legendary. Apparently, people were already calling it the night the family secrets came out. And then came a message I had been waiting for. From my mom. It was short, almost desperate. "Liam, please call me. We need to talk." For a moment, I just stared at it. Weeks ago, I might have jumped at the chance, but now I wasn't sure what there was left to say. Still, something in me wanted closure, so I called. She answered on the first ring, her voice trembling. "Liam, we never meant for things to go this far. Your father is, well, he's very upset. People are talking, and we can't even go to the store without someone asking questions. Chloe isn't speaking to us. We just wanted to give her a nice wedding. You forged my name," I said quietly. "You stole from me. You lied about me to the entire family. And now you're worried about what people are saying about you." There was a long pause. Then she whispered, "We don't know what to do anymore." "You stop," I said. "You stop lying. You stop using me. You stop pretending this was ever about family. And you fix what you broke. Every cent you took. Every rumor you spread. Every contract you signed with my name on it." "And if we do?" she asked, almost pleading. "Then maybe," I said, "you can start earning back my trust. But that's going to take a long, long time. And this time, it's going to be on my terms." She started crying softly on the other end. I didn't hang up immediately, but I didn't comfort her either. When she finally said goodbye, her voice was small, like she knew this was the first time I wasn't going to bend. Over the next few weeks, things changed quickly. The money they had taken was repaid in full. The legal threats disappeared. My lawyer even confirmed that my dad signed a formal agreement releasing me from any future family obligations. Chloe posted one last bitter message online, something about losing a brother, but it didn't get the sympathy she was hoping for. By then, most people knew the truth. The comments were full of people telling her she was lucky I hadn't pressed charges. For the first time in years, I felt like my life was mine again. And then came the final moment, the one that made everything worth it. I ran into one of my dad's former business partners at a coffee shop. He recognized me, came over and said, "I was at that wedding." "Well, you did. It took guts." Most people would have stayed quiet. I nodded, not sure what to say. He smiled. "Your parents underestimated you. They thought you'd stay the quiet, dependable son forever, but you showed everyone that you won't be controlled. That's not something they'll forget anytime soon." As I walked out of that coffee shop, the late afternoon sun warm on my face, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Peace. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just done. Done being the fixer. Done being the scapegoat. Done being the son who always said yes, no matter what it cost him. And as I unlocked my car, I caught myself smiling. Not because I'd won, but because I had finally truly walked away. I glanced back at the coffee shop window and saw my reflection, calm, steady, and free. And I thought, this is who I was meant to be all along. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I drove home with the windows down, the wind in my hair, and not a single ounce of guilt in my chest. Because the truth was out. The damage was done. And this time, I wasn't the one left picking up the pieces. This time they were.